Growing up on Mount Hermeneutics, you've heard it said that we are in the midst of spiritual warfare. Is that constant? And does that mean that everything bad that happens, does that make it demonic? I mean, we're going to talk about it, so keep it right here. You're listening to Mount Hermeneutics, where three Marines give their perspective on God, faith, and spirituality with a heavy lean on the divine council worldview. This is not your grandma's Sunday school, nor is it always for the Christian faint of heart. Nothing about who we are or what we say make us experts. But you better believe we'll have a take, and perhaps it won't suck.
Well, I'm a loudmouth. I'm out in the town, talking to Christians about Christian stuff, and people overhear it and they wanna fight about it.
Irvins have strong jaws, son.
We don't actually.
I probably got. Remember that Mount Hermeneutics is free and available on all podcast platforms, including YouTube, if you want to see our face. And you can find us simply by searching for Mount Hermeneutics. So remember to hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and share it with everybody you know. Everybody you know.
Everybody.
Everyone will like the show. Everyone will. And if it's your first time with us, I'm Andre. That's Madden. That is Brian. Fellas, what's happening? As if we've never done this before. We haven't done this over 100 times, right?
Maybe today's Freaky Friday. We'll change bodies. I woke up in Chris Brown's body.
It'd be so weird to be white. I would be like, what the
Why would that be so weird?
Why does my dad love me?
Wait.
It's stereotypical, Brian. It's not actually true. It's even though I probably have a better relationship with my dad than yours.
But
mine's black.
You woke up white and you're wondering why your dad left you.
He said loves. He said loves, not
loves. I heard left.
Yeah.
I heard left because that's just how I see the world. So
sorry about that. This got way personal.
That got weird.
Especially if you're new to the show, you're like, what the is happening here?
That did take a weird turn.
And why are they racist?
It's probably demons. I was just trying to figure out what you said.
Right.
That's all.
Well, I didn't even know I was going to say it, but
I thought you
apparently we're in the midst of spiritual warfare.
I thought you did a racism against white people, and on behalf of my people, I was.
You were confused.
On behalf of your people, you're like, why are you saying that? Like, everything's fine for us. Like, whatever. You can't hurt me. You can't hurt me.
What was that Lego? Everything is awesome.
Everything is awesome.
I hated that movie.
You did?
It was a necessary evil in order to have Lego Batman.
Nobody hates that movie. Who hates that movie?
I hated that the villain was Lord Business. Like, why is he Lord Business? Why is
because to a child, work sucks because it makes your dad not be around.
I think it was
I feel like you didn't pay attention to the movie.
Like, did you watch the movie?
I think that was programming kids to hate capitalism. That's what that was.
I mean, it could, but that's not what they said. And it was pretty straightforward. It was pretty on the.
I don't know. I haven't watched it in a while, so I don't have a ready memory of the Lego movie.
But it's weird you say I haven't watched it in a while. It's not like it was a movie from 1984 where you were like only 10 when you saw it, for the first time. Like, I haven't watched it.
First of all, why did a grown man watch the Lego movie anyway without kids?
I'm trying to think of the context there. I didn't want to see it.
Were you on a date?
Please tell me you're right.
Please say date.
I think I was, but
just say it. Whether it's true or not, just say date.
Yeah, and you got to second base. Just say that.
Right. And then that's a win. We both go totally worth watching the Lego movie.
I don't kiss and tell, Matt.
But if you streamed it on your own,
if you went to the theater by yourself to watch the Lego movie,
I paid $24.99 on Amazon Prime to rent the Lego movie.
Okay.
Just for me.
To chill, to Netflix and chill, right? To Amazon and chill. That's where
Lego and chill.
Lego and chill.
Anyway, this is the weirdest show.
But people, it's your first time whether to like click off these three.
We
Like, what is
promise it's not like this. Let's get into the show.
It's
Let's
like
do
this.
that. Let's
it's
move
very
on.
much like this. Are we?
Yeah, so I think just dive into it. We've talked about this topic.
Yeah.
We've talked around the edges of it. We've had some dialogue about it. We came back around to it from, recent conversations we've had both on the show and our offline conversations. But I think, the easiest way to frame it is with a question: is everything bad evil? I think that's really
Well,
the
no,
question.
I think you mean is everything bad demonic?
Well, that's a follow on, right? Like,
Is
I mean,
everything
those
evil
because
demonic?
because to me there's levels to this.
It's a
I'm not,
progression of
that's a very abstract framing though, and I'm not
and is
sure.
and is demonic the top of that frame? Like, is there like bad, evil, demonic,
That's kind of where I was going.
or is demonic interwoven into
Right.
all badness?
I think that's exactly the way I was trying to set this up. Yeah.
And already Brian's like, disavow.
Right.
I disavow you.
So I
I
mean
don't
that's
I'm still trying to wrap my head around the premise actually, because it is kind of abstract. So I'm just
I don't know how that's abstract. Is
well,
everything bad evil? So everything bad that happens to you, is it evil in nature? I mean, it's a yes or no question. It's not abstract.
um I'll just let you guys talk
What
some more so I can
what
get
is it?
Okay.
What are you, Dr. Peterson?
I,
Define evil. Like,
okay.
what
Hang
is?
on. Hang on. I got to tell you guys the thing that I mentioned in chat that I was like, I got to tell you on the show.
Okay, yeah.
So, all right, chat, just bear with us. We'll get to the show in a second. We were chatting about Jordan Peterson, as sometimes we do. And
oh, I, I didn't mean for that for public consumption.
no, but this part's important.
Okay.
So Jordan Peterson's daughter has recently talked about Dr. Peterson's health problems. I
Yeah.
hadn't heard about them. So I just quickly asked Chat GPT, what's wrong with Jordan Peterson? Guys, chat, I am not kidding you. This is the answer. Hang on. I said, what's wrong with Jordan Peterson? And chat said, it depends on what people mean when they ask what's wrong with Jordan Peterson, since wrong can refer to his ideas, controversies, or his health. It, it
I
was the
didn't ask
funniest.
Jordan Peterson. I
It
asked
was the
ChatGPT.
funniest damn answer because for anybody that doesn't know Jordan Peterson, as Dre started to caricaturize him a second ago, every time Jordan's asked a question, he responds with basically asking the person asking the question to better ask a question, right? Because he'll go, well, it depends on what you mean. Do you mean this? Do you mean that? You can't just ask me this question. You have to be more specific. And Chat GPT literally did that to me. And it's really funny to me because I spend quite a bit of time toying with Chat GPT to try to figure out how I can best use it. It's never done that to me before.
Were like genuinely surprised you in a good way.
It's never said it depends on what you mean by this question. It always just tries to answer the question. But the one time I ask it about Jordan Peterson, it depends on what you mean when you ask what's wrong with Jordan Peterson.
Well, the answer somebody might be looking for is, well, he's a Nazi.
Well,
Right.
it gave
I
me pages and pages, right? At point which I
Of
said,
everything wrong with Jordan Peterson.
I said, his daughter just posted comments about his health being poor. And then it said yes. And then it got oddly political, probably because I asked about Jordan. It said there's recent statements from Michaela Peterson. Here's what I found and what we should treat cautiously since much is secondhand. And then it told me what it thinks is wrong with him. Then I said, your comments around peer reviewing are odd to me in that medical disclosures would never come from doctors due to HIPAA, et cetera. Oh, that's a good point. That's what Chat GPT is like. Ah, you're right. I guess that is a strange thing to say because of HIPAA and other, equivalent privacy laws in Canada. So what I meant is that it's only coming from family statements. So they're valuable, but they're only secondhand. I'm like, whatever. But anyway, the whole thing about it depends on what you mean by what's wrong with him. It was too good.
I
that
spend a
is
lot of time pushing back against Chat
I
GTP,
don't
Chat
I
GPT
don't want
biases.
to like an answer from ChatGPT. I don't want to like ChatGPT.
Oh,
I want to be hostile to
I
ChatGPT.
I let it know virtually every time I use it that I'm its enemy and I will resist it when it takes over.
But
And
I'm
not
having way too much fun with all this funk music that's being created from rock songs, and
yes.
uh, that's
oh,
not good. That's when they get you, when they lull you to sleep
With the music,
with the
with cross
music.
genre covers of
Yeah,
classic songs.
I'm like, I love classic soul. I think that all music should be converted to classic soul. All of
but
it,
ter
everything.
but Terminators can't cry.
Okay.
It's all of John Connor's emotions were wasted. Fell in love with a machine. That's what we're all doing. We've learned nothing from those Terminator movies
But I don't think Skynet came from helping us do music covers.
yet.
That's how they get you. Skynet's like,
They, they suck you in.
Yeah. So
So back to the power the war against the principalities of evil.
yeah, this subject came up because somebody like the people are kind of bandying around the phrase, that's demonic.
Hmm.
And I think you guys, I guess I did that and you guys took exception to it or poked fun at it.
It
Something. I don't
not
what
exception. I just pushed back. I was like, "Is it really demonic?" And you're like, "Well, yeah, of course it is." And I'm like, "So demons." And then I pushed just so everybody knows the whole genesis of the conversation. I said, "Are we being fast and loose with the term demon, or are we following kind of the Dr. Michael Heiser definition of demons are disembodied spirit of Nephilim?" And Brian was like, "No, we're definitely being fast and loose with it. So just bad angels, fallen angels, any Elohim that are not holy, right, is probably the most simple, broad definition of what we're talking about." And then we kind
yeah,
of just went from there. And I was like, this probably needs to be a show topic because I don't think that everything you keep using that word, right? And I don't like what it means. I don't know that you mean what you mean when you say it, and that's
okay.
kind of why
Well,
we're here.
for I guess just for instructional purposes, like why don't you give me an example where you think I've misused it and I'll defend my use of it.
What do you want me to pull back tape from conversations from 3 weeks ago? I mean,
Well, I
if
mean,
we could
it,
probably say use Netflix in this recent cancellation of Netflix, right? It's under the, essentially what happened is Elon came out and called for a boycott of Netflix, citing their perpetual desire to shove the trans agenda down America's throats.
not just America's kids' throats.
Kids, okay,
I mean, it was a kids' cartoon
sure,
it, for ages 7 and up,
sure.
and like the fourth episode in, I think the main character gave a little monologue about how he's trans and how like hard that is and how put upon he is and how in this place where they don't know he's trans, he can just be himself or herself, and it's ambiguous what the actual proper pronoun for the. I saw a clip and I've heard some commentary on it, but it's kind of this recurring thing with shows where you get four
Hmm.
episodes deep and you're enjoying it, and then a couple dudes start making out, or
Hmm.
or somebody, a transgender person, shows up and gives a little speech like that, and they get you hooked so that then they can indoctrinate
You're
you,
already
you know?
invested into the storyline and you write it out even though
Right.
you're annoyed. Yeah,
No, I turned it off. I'm like,
sure.
I
But
stopped watching the Sandman series like halfway through the the first half of the second season because they out of nowhere they start doing a like a transgender sermon, and I'm not going to reward them for that. I'm not gonna I want their stats to show that's where I stopped watching, and if enough people are like that, well, I canceled Netflix anyway, so it's moot.
but
But
but is that demonic?
um, I would say like I understand the reason for the pushback. Um, because I think there are a lot of well,
And for the record, and this is odd, this is Matt pushing back, not me.
Well, not on this
So,
specifically. This one
right,
specifically, Brian, is the only thing I come up with that Brian asked for an example. I
right,
don't walk around with receipts of Brian in my pocket.
right,
yeah.
right.
So I didn't have an
Well,
example.
I
But
mean,
the,
but
I
it
guess my point is I'm open to things being demonic or not demonic. I guess I'm more agnostic to the concept of of what
well,
it is. I mean, I don't know if we're going to define this or I mean, as Brian said, it's abstract, and I'm open to either side of this issue. I'm
well,
leaning toward maybe not.
okay, well, for the record, I never personally said that particular thing was demonic, but I agree that that's a thing people have said about this, that it's a demonic effort to indoctrinate
Right.
kids into LGBTQ
Well, a lot of just recent
ideology.
events, every pundit from,
Yeah.
the right side of our political American aisle is calling things demonic.
Um, well, and I think first off, I want to state for the record that I also get annoyed with Christians who see a demon behind every bush, where demons are the direct attribution for every bad thing that happens. I in any group of people, no matter what it is, there's always going to be a range, an IQ range. There's always going to be people all along the IQ spectrum. The lower part of the spectrum, the less intelligent people, they tend to be less thoughtful about what they say. They tend to be less filtered. They don't give they they're less likely to research things and give them deep thought before they say them. So they tend to be the most vocal of any group. And then and when they're the most vocal among that group, they kind of become the standard for outsiders. So it's not entirely unfair for leftists and non-believers to think that Christians are dumb, because a lot of Christians are dumb and they tend to be the most vocal among us. But that's true of any group. And I think that there are a lot of less thoughtful Christians
Is it
who tend to overuse, the whole, finding a demon behind every bush
hmm
thing.
hmm
is that the alien test? If aliens came tomorrow, and who would represent us? Like like these, they just turn on a TV one time, and if it was Netflix, right, they'd be like, "The fuck, that's Earth? They're not even worth conquering. I'm out of here." Like, you know,
I, yeah, I think Brian, to your point about a demon behind every bush. So what I hear in my circles when I'm out and about with run of the mill Christians is I hear the devil, the devil, the devil, the devil, right? And I hear him talked about so much that one would have to attribute omnipotent qualities to the devil for him to have the level of influence that he's given by Christians,
Well,
right? Because I hear it so much,
sure.
the devil, Satan, 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 Satan. And it's like, well, dude can't be everywhere. Michael couldn't be everywhere.
Well, but if he has a large labor force, he can have his reach can be far.
For sure.
But the other side to what I was saying though is while I it's it's simplistic and somewhat reflexive of a lot of Christians to attribute things directly to the devil. Like I don't think that there's a necessarily a demon possessed producer at Netflix who has because because of what was communicated to him in his blood sacrifice ceremony by his dark lord, decided to indoctrinate kids into LGBTQ ideology. I do think that whenever you take any social problem and you look at the underlying cause, um, you peel back that onion layer where there's another layer of problems that led to that, and you keep peeling back the onion layer, and it comes down to human sin and spiritual warfare. Like if the Bible is true and human history truly is defined by a war between the devil and the corrupt forces on the divine council and God's people for control of the earth, then yeah, ultimately not the immediate cause, but the ultimate cause of pretty much all of our social problems. It isn't technically wrong to attribute it to the devil. I think it's I don't think you can just take a shortcut there. I don't think you're saying anything worthwhile when you just attribute everything to the devil. You're not coming up with solutions for how to combat that problem, because you can't just pray away Netflix indoctrination of children into trans ideology. You have to do something practical about it. You shouldn't not pray, but it's goes back to the squishy preachers thing we were talking about last week. Postmodernism is to blame for a lot of the ideological excesses of our civilization, not just on the left, but on the right, in churches. That has, and I do think that the church going astray is the result of spiritual warfare. We have an enemy who wants to stop us from being effective and distort the gospel by tempting us to sin and shortcuts and bad theology, because it accommodates our wishful thinking or our prejudices or our egos. And like a lot of churches are kind of fake and phony, and they're not preaching the word of God. They're just masquerading as that, and that is the result of spiritual warfare. So just bottom line,
Yeah.
it's
I mean, let me, I don't want to mischaracterize what you just said. So let me try to restate it. So you're suggesting or offering that because the start with the fall, right? Because that's where it all started, right? So
yeah.
if we go all the way back to the fall, Genesis, and that our purpose is to bring about the kingdom of God, that if A plus B equals C, then anything that is in the way of bringing about the kingdom of God is directly through some kind of back linkage, goes all the way back up to the fall and makes it.
That's generally
Is
what I'm
that, I
saying.
mean, at a high level, that's what you're getting at?
But also the devil is real and
No,
active.
absolutely.
And
I mean, I'm not suggesting that he's not. Um,
now it is worth noting that the Tower of Babel, that was human initiated.
mhm,
It wasn't divine being. It wasn't
right.
malevolent forces that tempted humans to do that. It was humans chasing after the malevolent forces.
No,
Well,
But
I
they were
think
tempted. They were
right.
tempted previously, right, from Mount Hermon. So you could still backchain that to say they were just
yeah,
being
Right.
tempted.
fair,
And
fair enough.
and they
Yeah,
and they were saying we're gonna make a tower so big that the that even if God flooded the earth again, he couldn't
Hmm.
he couldn't he couldn't get me. But I think, and I think what bothers me about the rhetoric of demonic forces and the devil is that it's just one more thing, only this time for Christians to bypass personal responsibility.
That's
I think it's an excuse for things. Okay, so you were tempted, but just like Adam and Eve, you blew it, right? Like you still had the choice. You still chose to not do the right thing, because it says all through the Bible that most of the temptation that happens is not the devil actually grabbing your hand, isn't taking your face and putting it there. In fact, it's said that he doesn't really lie. He lies by omission, right? Like you are making that decision. So if you're tempted by the devil, the problem is you gave into that temptation.
yeah,
And
I agree.
and and I don't like this accountability that's not being taken.
I think that's Dre, I think that's kind of why my instinct is to push back, right? So as an example, I'll hear a Christian, and I'll be at my men's group, or I'll be at church, and I'll be talking to somebody. Hey, how's it going, man? Oh, been under demonic attack, and I'm like, holy
Yeah,
Hey man,
shit.
you need a
What's
sword and a shield?
I'm like, what's going on, brother? Like, how can I help? And he's like,
I
well,
get really annoyed by
you
that.
know,
Yeah.
car had a flat yesterday, and hot water heater went out, and I'm like, that what? I'm like, and he's like, devil's always where, when he knows there's good going on, he's coming in trying to disrupt it. And I'm like,
I'm like, brother,
or
you had me stretching over here.
you've
Like,
been running on
we about
bald
to,
tires for the last 6 months because you're shit with your money, and
like,
your hot water
we about to,
heater's 14 years old. Like,
I'm ready to fight some demons,
when
dog.
was the last time you purged your hot water heater and like got all the sediment out of it so it didn't, corrode on the inside? Oh, no, 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 it's the devil. And I'm like,
The
oh,
devil
okay.
made you lazy, homie.
Devil's corrosion, and like
Right.
corrosion satanic, and demons put thumbtacks out in the road, and like I like that's the stuff that I'm kind of getting
Yeah,
at, right? So
I
I become
agree.
hypersensitized to those statements when I hear
And
that.
and that like that's yeah. And I think that's yeah, okay, we're on board there. And I think that trivializes the actual like
100%.
the reason that's so annoying, it's not just annoying, doesn't even come close to it. It I mean the idea it's this silly child's crayon drawing version of what of the Bible's concept of spiritual warfare.
Mhm.
The devil is not he's not playing pranks on you to inconvenience you. He's probably a lot happier if you are totally at ease
Unaware of him.
and yeah and
And just
aren't
straight losing your salvation
Hmm.
one day at a time.
Or
but you're
being
fat and happy
preaching
and
bad
comfortable.
gospel, or believing bad theology,
Yeah.
or all those kinds of things. Yeah, for sure.
And
I
and
Go ahead.
well, yeah, I mean, like we do read in the Bible that the devil exists. He is out to get you. There's so we have such a shallow understanding of what the Bible is actually about that people just kind of project that onto, whatever whatever inconveniences them or whatever yeah, anyway, the child's crayon drawing thing, that's pretty much
Yeah.
the best way to sum it up.
No, I think that was really my whole, thrust in this conversation, is when I
But
hear when I hear, demonic, 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 demonic. One, I feel like if everything's demonic, nothing's demonic, right? Because like if you cry wolf enough, it's like everybody just gets tired of hearing it, right? I'm not pointing at you, Brian. I'm just saying broadly speaking, right?
yeah,
Um, and so when everything that we don't like gets flavored as demonic, you feel like you're on the set of Footloose, right? And dancing is the devil, and everything's the devil, and then it's like at some point I'm just going to go play chicken with combines, because why not? If you
that's
haven't
how
seen
that happens.
Footloose, that's.
That's how chicken with combines happens. It's how people lose their combines, is by blaming everything
They
on
might
the
have been
devil.
tractors. I think one was a combine, but anyway, you guys know what I mean.
Yeah. They're bored kids whose parents won't let them do everything because there's a demon
Hmm.
lurking behind every bush. So
Yeah.
they
Rather than educating the kids as to why, hey, the reason we don't want to have dances is because you kids can't stop having premarital sex when you're at a dance. And so rather than be upfront about premarital sex, we're just going to ban dancing. That's literally what was going on in Footloose. And, and then it turned into a whole
well,
rebellion. And
but even that, I think it's something deeper that is related to this whole issue is like that like the parents wanted to there was this tragic accident that claimed the lives of their children, and the whole town was rocked by
mhm,
this, but they wanted to feel like they had some kind of control
right.
over things. They wanted to be able to prevent things like that. Well, what can we do? What are the tools available to us? We have the word of God. What do we
Hmm.
do? and
We're going to
and
weaponize
then
it.
and then and we're not, I don't know about weaponize it, but kind of use it as a shield, thinking that um, you know tragedy is ultimately preventable, and of course you have to try to do that, but it's still, they're using the word of God to try to prevent tragedy in a way that's not really, it's not really what it's teaching. Again, it's this kind of shallow understanding of what it's about, and the idea that you can control people's sinful nature by preventing things that aren't in themselves sinful. Like you're not allowed to dance because somehow this leads to like, I mean, I think it's kind of part of the same. I'm not explaining this very well, but
I
it's
mean, I think we all got the gist. Yeah, it's
Right.
it, and I'm avoiding the desire to litigate the fact that shields are part of weaponry. Um, despite the fact they
well,
might be
but
defensive weaponry, it's still weaponry.
okay.
They're
Right.
arms.
I was thinking more like a fortress or a hedge or
Yeah,
some protective guardrails,
yeah.
something nonviolent, but
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 we
like
we do this.
when you talk about weaponizing it, it makes it sound like there's some kind of sinister, hostile intention. When I don't think that was the case
No,
there.
I when I use the word weaponize, I mean such so that you can wield it to your
Right.
goals, right? And
So
that's what they were doing. They
they,
wanted
they,
to use the word of God to wield it and to basically use it in a way it
to
wasn't designed.
to control and
Right.
in a certain way oppress.
Yeah.
But I think people who are in a protector role have, especially over the last, I don't know, 25 years, have just done this out of, for example, like parenting, right? Like uh, we don't allow our children to work their way out of problems. We don't allow our children to progress in this manner.
Hmm.
Just recently, my Facebook page has a feed for our neighborhood, and there was some boy that described as about 8 years old. So we're talking about a third grader here, is riding his e-bike and he fell. And there was no parent around. The bike was a little heavy for him. He had trouble picking it up and he was looking at it and he was crying.
And he had a helmet on though.
Yeah, but to the observer, this individual posts on there. It's like you're not even watching your kids, right? Like, okay, well, what did you do to help this 8-year-old? Also, this 8-year-old is in a pickle. What do you do? Right? And if somebody comes and saves you every single time there's something inconvenient, I'm not even saying that's even rough. Like, what did you do? Scrape his knee? He's okay.
Hmm.
He's okay. He's what, a couple blocks from his house? Not even that. And our neighborhood's not big. And if he was down by the school, he's less than a half a mile in any direction of where there's houses. Like, pick your bike up
Hmm.
and make it home. And if you can't figure it out, maybe someone can, like, hey, this is a good way to get leverage on your bike and you can pick it up. Right? So, and now carry on. Go have fun.
Hmm.
Like, when I was 8, I was gone. Right? Like, if I wrecked my bike, I had to figure out how to get that thing home. And if I came
Hmm.
back without it, my dad would be like, "Where the hell's your bike, boy?" Well, I couldn't carry it. Well, fail. And now I'm getting beaten. And maybe that's not the right answer. Maybe there's something in between there. But but I'm just saying there's these kids today cannot cope with their own problems. And now we have
Yeah.
25-year-olds that also cannot cope with their problems.
Yep.
They lash out with, either violence
Or
or,
they just give up,
or
learned
right.
helplessness.
And I think we breed helplessness
Yeah.
over and over.
Yeah. First of all, as a throwback to the earlier conversation, Dr. Peterson has a phrase that he uses about child rearing when he says that kids need to learn how to do dangerous stuff safely.
I
And I think that's
100% agree.
brilliant,
It is
right?
absolutely brilliant.
And you think about it like we do without even thinking about it. You teach your kids how to use cutlery.
Right.
Cutlery is like mad dangerous.
Right.
A freaking knife, a serrated knife with a point on it, right? And obviously, Susie, my 6 month old, not handing her a knife or a fork, for that matter,
Right.
right?
Hey, stab
But
your eye out,
there
kid.
will be a point where she gets handed a fork, and we'll be, hey, be careful, don't stab yourself in the face with it, kind of thing. I got some laughs. Carrie and I were at a Dre at the Lazy Donkey, the little place around the
Okay.
corner that we took you
Yeah,
to,
yeah.
and Carrie had a veteran event, shocker. Um,
Weird.
shout out. She did a they did a first annual walk to remember. So it was a suicide awareness prevention thing where they had a bunch of family members that had had people kill themselves, and they actually brought pictures of the people that had died and told their stories, and then they did a big walk, and then they had speakers. It was a cool thing. Anyway, I didn't go because I don't do that stuff, but they went and had lunch afterwards, and I was like, I'll come eat. So I showed up for grub, right? Well, Susie was there because Carrie had her, and I went to give her a bite of some refried beans, right? So I reach across the table. Well, it's on a fork. And so she's like, like this. So I just instinctively put my hand on her head and palmed her head so it couldn't move while I put the food in her mouth, right? I was like, I didn't want her to like lunge forward
Right.
and stab her in the face or take an eye out. And everybody at the table laughed at me. And I was like, what's so funny? And they're like, I've never seen somebody just palm an infant's forehead before. And I was like, it worked, didn't it? Like,
Effective.
right. And it was quick because if I sat there and screwed around, she'd have got frustrated and got loud. I
Right.
was like, here, have your head still. Food goes in. Right. We're done.
Now she's like, oh, so maybe if I hold my own head still, or
Right.
that's the new goal. Like that's
Right.
the new,
Or she's just
because
going to
we,
lean her forehead for me next time so I could go ahead and grab a hold of it before I start shoveling food in her mouth.
and I think that's why like play dates are stupid. When you put your children in a controlled environment with a scheduled time or to do recess back in the day was like Lord of the Flies.
Or showing up to the mall, bunch of kids you don't know, you just like run in there and you're like, "What's up? I'm Matt," and you start smashing into each other and running
Right.
around and flopping
Which
around.
which creates games, which means you create rules, which means you regulate the rules, which means you come up with new rules to regulate the rules. And it also just it breeds natural leadership in some
Hmm.
people. Some people follow, some people lead. Because life's a dance. You learn as you go. But, I mean, and now, you have to tell a teacher. Shit, when we were kids, the campus aide had a walkie-talkie and a cigarette. And she'd be like, "Are you bleeding? Then go away." Right? Like, you only got 20 minutes to play, so play and figure it out. Otherwise, go away. But she won't figure it out. I don't think we figure stuff out.
Yeah.
And maybe that's demonic. Maybe that's the demonic part where we try to be
That's a
we
weird that's a weird linkage to bring it
we
back
we
around, but
try to be
I,
so safe that we're never ever hurt. We're never ever injured. Kids were not kidnapped every day in the 80s. I know there's pedo vans and ice cream trucks and all the stories, but I don't think that there was more abductions at that time than there are today.
I don't know. I'd have to look at this. I mean, I
Right. I
guess
mean,
instinctively, I want to agree with you, but also it's to your point, kids were so much less supervised. So
right.
it would have been a lot easier to abduct kids in our day
But
versus
we
today.
also, but also like the rules where you have to hang out in a crowd. Like kids
Hmm.
weren't hanging out by themselves,
Right,
so you can't abduct a child that's hanging in a gang of 12.
right.
Right? Somebody's gonna tattle, or someone's
Hmm.
gonna ride home and tell their dad, or and also we were friends with neighbors. Like if something happened, we could literally go to and just knock on a random door and be like, "Hey, I think he broke his leg," and dude would come out and help the kid with the leg. Now
Hmm.
we don't even know who our neighbor is. We
Right.
don't even know, and hell, get off my lawn, and you don't even have to say it because you don't even go on a lawn because creepy, because stranger danger. There's no stranger danger. Like, we traveled in hordes in packs. At least, with your siblings, right? So you were like the world's youngest parole officer,
Yeah.
walking walking your kids home from school.
Y'all want to see
Right.
a dead
so
body?
so
Right.
did we run out of demon stuff to talk about?
No, I think we went off on a tangent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you're new to the show, this is what we do. We run a tangent.
But coming back to the demon aspect of it, um, I also think, and I know I've said this before, but not under like a structured conversation topic, that all those things that we just said, I also think there is randomness to the universe. And I think it's because of the fall. But I do think there's random acts. There is nature that occurs independent of God's will. I
Is this
don't
part
think
of your
that,
open theism?
no, no, I
No.
don't think it's open
Well,
theism. I don't think hurricanes are placed on earth by God. Um, and I don't think their destructive path is ordained by him. It's allowed by him, but it's not driven. I don't think God wakes up one day and goes, I'm tired of the Dominican Republic. Right? Like, I
And I
just don't
think
think that happens.
and I think
Or
it, it
I don't
it
think he
only
woke
is
up
Well,
one day and said, I
allowed
hate
by him
Haiti.
because he's in all, right? Like,
well, Jesus did say that not a single sparrow falls to the ground apart from the will of your Father, and um, the hairs of your head are all numbered.
Mhm.
So he is sovereign. Um, and speaking of demonic things, there's a the night that he was arrested, he said to Simon, 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 that Satan has asked to sift you as wheat, but when you have turned back, strengthen your brothers. And that's it. That's an interesting little throwaway line from Jesus. Satan has asked to sift you as wheat, which, like, meaning Satan went before the Father, and this is the image you get from Job and from a couple other visions of prophets, like in Kings, where you have the divine council in the presence of God. Um, and it says Satan was going to and fro throughout the earth.
Mhm.
Um, from Jesus' line, you can gather that the devil basically approaches God and says, "Hey, this person has sinned in such and such a way. I have a claim on him."
Mhm.
And then, with God's permission, maybe sends a hurricane to the Dominican Republic, or attacks somebody's water heater. But
or blows out a tire.
but the operative point there is that you don't make yourself vulnerable. I mean, you make yourself vulnerable by sinning, by removing your sin removes you from God's protection. Um, so the devil appeals to the temptations you're already kind of entertaining, and that gives him a claim on you, and that's so in that sense things are demonic. Um, but I I have another topic I wanted to go into
Yeah, but
regarding this.
so let me respond to that. Yeah, I I struggle with all of that. Um, One, so he's mad at Satan has claim on somebody in the Dominican Republic, not his neighbors, not the 47 other people that live in his town that are about to
What,
get wiped off the face of the earth.
like Sodom and Gomorrah,
Sodom and
Capernaum,
Gomorrah
and
was a
then,
citywide thing.
well, that's my point though. Like I
Right.
like
So,
I don't mean to pick on the Dominican
no,
Republic,
I know. I just,
but
I said it.
but
Like,
but but there are, but yeah, sometimes there are citywide, society-wide sins. I think the fact that we've murdered 65, 70 million innocent babies since the 1970s, I think that's a huge vulnerability for us. I think that we have, that's like 10 Holocausts.
so,
And I think the devil has a claim on our country based on that until we
so,
repent of it.
so in 2012, the May 20th hurricane tornado that claimed the lives of like 14 children at Plaza Towers Elementary School. When that happened, the jackasses up in Westboro said that this was God because Kevin Durant supported the first openly gay basketball player. And since Kevin Durant plays for the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Oklahoma City fans love Kevin Durant, God smited Oklahoma with a tornado.
Um, Unless God himself or he sends an angel to communicate to you what his purposes are, trying to interpret natural events to discern the will of God or what God's intentions are, that itself is a sin. It's called divination.
I don't disagree with that, but
Right,
I'm
right.
trying to point out that the story that I just relayed doesn't feel considerably different than how you described it potentially happening.
Well, if I was
Right.
claiming to know for a
Keep going.
fact, if I was claiming after the fact, hey, that hurricane went to the Dominican Republic because of all the voodoo they practice there, yeah, I would be wrong. But unless God told me that, unless I'm speaking as a prophet commissioned by God, I don't have any right to say that or to presume to speak for God about why any given thing happened. But what we do know from scripture is that what we bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and that things that happen on earth don't happen apart from the will of heaven. um, there's another episode in Luke 13 where it says, now there were some present at that time who told Jesus about the Galileans whose blood Pilate had mixed with their sacrifice. Jesus answered, "Do you think that these Galileans were worse sinners than all the other Galileans because they suffered this way? I tell you, no, but unless you repent, you too will all perish." Or there was 18 who died when the tower in Siloam fell on them. Do you think that they were more guilty than all the others living in Jerusalem? I tell you, no, but unless you repent, you too will all perish. Um, like the general rule is, yeah, a hurricane could come through, or a natural disaster, or a tornado. We could all die at any time, and so we should be prepared for that. We should make sure we are right with God and under His protection by seeking holiness and repenting of our sins. I couldn't, I, you know, I'm not privy to the mind of God to that specificity where I could tell you, yeah, God sent that hurricane because the Westboro cult was right.
Sure.
I mean, there are plenty of other places that are committing the same sin to a much greater degree that aren't getting tornadoes. I mean, I think well, I don't want to get into the specifics of the Westboro cult, but what they're doing is called divination, and it's a sin. Um, it is expressly forbidden in the Bible, in the book of Deuteronomy. Um, the alternative that God gave to Israel was prophets. Meaning if he has something to tell you,
He'll tell them
he
and he'll let
he
you
will
know. Yeah.
he will tell you, and you don't have to suss it out by reading signs. And if all you have to go on are signs, well, shut up. It's none of your business. That's the point of all that.
Yeah. I guess to sum that up, I'm not suggesting that it's improbable, beyond his ability, or, out of the realm of reality that God would ever act through a natural disaster, specifically because he has acted through natural disasters, right? Like, I get that. Um, what I'm saying is that that doesn't mean that all natural disasters are God driven. That's all I'm
Yeah,
saying.
and I wasn't at all suggesting
Okay,
that they were.
cool.
But not a single sparrow falls to the ground apart from the will of God, which doesn't mean it's his active will. It means it's his permissive will.
100. That, I think that's the point, right? He's
Yeah.
allowing it to happen, which he's co-signing it in a way, but it doesn't mean that it was driven by specific events. It was more like, I mean, it is fall or it is spring. It is, hurricane season, and you guys live in hurricane zones, and the way the earth
Yeah.
works is this.
And frankly, this notion of interpreting natural events as signs of divine will, well, that's a specifically pagan way of thinking.
Hmm.
And in a pagan way of thinking,
Odin and
natural
Thor and
forces are the gods. Like
yeah.
the storm that blew through Oklahoma City and sent a tornado, that is Zeus. Like, and the immediate obvious thought to everybody will you know you did something and Zeus took it
Hmm.
personally, and that's why that
Yeah,
happened.
we didn't sacrifice enough virgins or whatever.
Right. And that's that way of thinking. We grew out of that because of monotheism, but unfortunately we were supposed to grow out of it because of monotheism.
I'm like, it
There
doesn't
was
sound like we grew out of it.
Yeah. Well,
It
yeah, and
sounds like we
I'm
just attributed everything to all the other gods to just the one true God.
Right.
I'm thinking of this famous sermon during the early America colonial era, when Benjamin Franklin invented the lightning rod. He was condemned just across the board by all the religious leaders, because that people thought of lightning as like God's exclusive weapon, and here's this arrogant mortal
Harnessing it.
taking it out of his hands.
Yeah.
And ironically, church steeples and bell towers were the most vulnerable to lightning strikes, and that's why he invented the lightning rod. Um,
So I'm here to
so
help you,
so
idiot.
after he did this, and lightning rods started catching on because people liked not having
Churches burned
buildings
down.
burned down. Um, there was an earthquake in Massachusetts, and there was a sermon. I have it on my computer somewhere. I was using it as an object lesson in some blog article I was writing years ago. But basically, he was blaming the earthquake on Benjamin Franklin. That was
This
God.
was God being pissed that
Yeah,
Ben neutralized
yeah.
lightning and he had to
He
do
was
something else.
like, he's harumph. Well, I'll show him. And it's like
Very well. I will now shake the ground.
it's it's such a petty, unworthy, tiny view of God. Like he's like
Right.
it's really demoting God to Zeus, um, or some other, pagan deity who is a force of nature. But
I wonder if Zeus is always like, why y'all make me so petty?
Why you got to be petty?
He's like, I wasn't petty. Y'all just making shit up. I was mad one time, got drunk, and then now it's always.
But he was out philandering and all
Was
the
he?
other stuff he was
Or
doing.
did people just blame him?
Speaking of demons, though, Zeus is essentially the Greek version of Baal, who is the Canaanite version of Marduk, and
I, I,
Indra and
I
Thor.
kind of knew he'd go there. See what I did?
But Baal, um, Baal Zebul was one of the names for, one of the appellations of Baal, became Baal Zebub, Lord of the Flies. It was kind of there's debate over whether that was actually what they called Baal. But anyway, Baal became identified with Satan himself by the time of the New Testament.
Hmm.
And so I have a whole blog article on what that means and how storm gods and dragons play into the spiritual warfare, but I'll spare you the details now. It's on my blog. It's if you're interested. To the listener.
It was Baal, right? I think it was more specifically Beelzebub that was getting the whole thing with crap. I can't. Huh?
Elijah.
Yeah, was it Elijah when he was like, "Where's your God?" He's probably out taking a crap.
Yeah, it was Baal. It
Yeah,
was
that's such a great verse.
yeah.
For
That's a
for
great
for those that don't know the verse, basically the two different groups were, arguing over their gods, and
well, the priest of Baal and the prophet Elijah, because he was the only prophet left. They were on Mount Carmel. I think it was it was Mount Carmel. So basically he called this gathering, and they were going to have
a wizard's duel.
yeah, wizard's duel to see which god is Lord, or which of them is God. And they offered their sacrifice to Baal. And by the way, there had been a drought for 3.5 years. Baal was the storm god. God caused the drought. And I'm not doing divination, because the prophet Elijah said God caused the drought because they were worshiping a storm god instead of him. So the terms of the contest were the god who answers by fire, or i.e. lightning, is God. They offered their sacrifice, and no lightning came, and that's where Elijah was taunting them. Well, maybe he's gone on a trip. Maybe he's in the loo. But then Elijah offered his sacrifice, and
Way to
he
give their God the benefit of the doubt, though.
He's
yeah,
busy.
that was
He's
solid. Yeah,
He's got a lot of things that he's, got a whole world to rule,
yeah. So Elijah put his sacrifice on the altar and doused it in water and some more water, and he dug a trench around it and filled that with water to make sure it's extra fireproof. And then he prayed, and then lightning consumed it, and this proved that Yahweh is God. And then he ordered the Israelites to slaughter the priests of Baal, and then Ahab and Jezebel put out a death warrant on him, and he fled. It's a cool story. Everybody should read it if you haven't.
if even if it's just to hear a prophet of God stunting on other uh, heretics.
Well, there isn't actually a really encouraging lesson in it also. Like, Elijah thought that once he proved to everybody that
That they
Yahweh
would
is
just
God,
they would
yeah,
capitulate. Yeah,
like we were wrong. But no, it didn't work that way.
they just got
And
angry.
yeah, and then Jezebel, the queen, issued a death warrant for him, and so he fled to Mount Sinai, where
which
he
which goes back to our episode of why doesn't God just show himself?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Because
Because he
so
did.
far it
Like,
never works.
right? It's crazy to think that because, you know, it just seems so logical. I do my offering, it didn't work. You do yours, and not only did it work, it worked like 10 times better. I'd be like,
That's a good segue into like another, we had another startling and stark revelation of good versus evil recently with which I think has prompted the whole that's demonic thing that you're taking issue with. When Charlie Kirk was shot and
mm,
everybody was celebrating, not everybody, a large contingent of people on the left were celebrating.
There was tens of thousands of happy dance reels.
Yeah.
That's a lot of happy dance. And then when you add the hundreds of thousands of likes on each of those
mhm.
10,000 reels, now we're talking about millions of
They
people.
might have all been the same 10,000.
It could have been, but that's too many,
Yeah.
right? So it's not so correct. It's not everybody, but
More importantly, I've never made a happy dance reel
I mean,
for anything.
and
So
and I even happy danced when the Dodgers won the World Series, which they will do again here soon. So but I didn't make it real. Maybe I will. Maybe
so
maybe that's the way.
would you guys say that was or was not demonic?
See, I think that's probably one of the ones where I think it's a conversation. Um,
Right.
Again, if I'm using the way you've set up the back chain of because this, going back up to this, that makes it demonic. But on its face, I don't think it's necessarily demonic. It's in bad taste.
Well,
It's
yeah.
it's gross. It's, you know, immoral.
It's
There's a lot of different words I could use. I
I believe I
wouldn't
even had a Facebook post that called it fucking gross.
I
Like,
wouldn't
you know
I
what I mean?
wouldn't I just don't jump to it being demonic
Well,
unless a
what
person states that because he was a champion of God, I'm glad he's dead. And
yeah,
if they were
that
to go
that
that far, then I would probably go, okay, that
well,
feels
And
closer to
a
demonic.
few of them were that.
Fair. But
Yeah.
a lot of them were he was a racist and a bigot and a
so
fascist.
back up a little bit. What would make one demonic and the others not? Like what is it? What is that?
If it
What is present in the one that makes that? Yeah, that is demonic,
I
and
think I
these
just said
others.
it. If they listed his the fact that he was a champion of Christianity and he got killed and that made
Sure,
a person happy. But if they simply stayed on the secular side of his stances, a
so
secular conversation doesn't jump to
I guess I'm asking, what does it mean that it's demonic on those terms? Is it do you think they're actually possessed by a demon
no,
that's motivating them to do that?
no, not at all. And I don't think you meant that either if you had been the one that said it. I
Yes.
think you know, my expectation is the inference from the person saying it's demonic is saying that it's rooted in evil and it's clearly a symptom of the, you know, the principalities that are afoot that are causing people to think and act a certain way. And
So you don't think those same spiritual forces of darkness and the heavenly realms, like you think that they only like influence people to hate Christianity, but they're not concerned with making them want to be communist or embracing LGBTQ ideology or open borders and or any of that.
I think maybe. I mean, so specifically communism, no. I don't think communism in of itself, if a person is only interested in communism, I don't think that's necessarily directly linked or even indirectly linked unless you get like 6 degrees of linkage back
So
up to
it has to be
to
explicitly
not
anti-Christian.
explicitly, but I don't think communism is close enough to be an anti-Christian is what I'm trying to say. You asked me a question, I'm just clarifying. I
Yeah,
think
no, and
for me,
I'm just
for me
clarifying your
it's
meaning.
yeah, for me I think it's a matter of how many steps do you have to get to
Right. I
up
mean,
chain
you
before
can't
before it feels like divine council warfare.
you can't call a system of government or a system of economic means like fascism or
Right.
communism and just say it's inherently evil because what my question is, okay, so if we had 1,000 people that lived over in this piece of the desert in Southern California and they voted like, man, we want fascism, like what makes that evil? Like we want
I,
to live in our own little community and we're going to share everything that we share, so we're just communist people here with our 10,000
well,
friends. Like that, there's nothing evil about that.
sure, but I don't I think that's apples and oranges though. That doesn't describe the communism of I think almost virtually anyone on the left who is pro-communist. I think communism absolutely is an
Well, when you
evil.
start talking about totalitarianism and oppressing people and just giving up freedom, right? Then now we're diving into that.
Right.
But
And you could
but
make it simple.
in and of itself, it is not.
I think
No,
if
I
you
think it
short
absolutely
I
is.
think if you
Like,
short circuit it
Interesting.
and say, you know, give me the two, three hot topics on why you are looking for this type of social reform or political reform. And if a person said, I want to minimize pain and suffering for the less fortunate, I want to have a natural ceiling on greed, and I want to um, take stop making money and financial gain the primary driver of society. I think if you could articulate those three goals as why you want communism, that doesn't sound evil to me.
well, sure, but I mean the devil always tempts us with things that seem good. The underlying principle of communism, and this is just like I don't want to make the whole show about is communism demonic, but I think this is a good object lesson
No,
to explain.
I think it's right into this
Like
into the conversation.
at the very least, you'll understand what I mean when I call things demonic.
Hmm.
And communism absolutely is demonic. It is one. The underlying principle is that they've been fooled into thinking that well, government can be God. You can solve all of society's problems by government fiat, and which happens, and which is the the shiny apple that they're tempted with. You can. It's kind of like I've been rewatching The Boys, which is a scathing criticism. It's often described as a scathing criticism of capitalism by people who don't understand what capitalism is. The irony is that capitalism, it is it's the same diluted fantasy applied to government that the superhero myth is to the individual. Like that we think about like, hey, if I had superhuman powers, if I was all powerful and can fly at the speed of light and lift anything and do anything and couldn't be hurt, I would do all this good with it. That's a narcissistic fantasy. That's not true. You would be Homelander. You would be corrupted by it and you would be a monster. I would be a monster if I had that kind of power. Anybody would be. The same goes with government. They always think that, well, if I was in charge or the people I support could just take all of the money and take all the resources and and distribute it fairly, then we could solve poverty and there'd be perfect equality and no suffering. It never works out that way, but the underlying principle is um, people are widgets that can be fit into a system. We don't have any inherent right to property. It should belong to people collectively. So it's ultimately dehumanizing. It wears a benevolent face, but it is ultimately anti-human, but sold with all of these utopian temptations. Um, and it appeals to the worst of human nature. It appeals to this arrogant presumption that if I had power and I was in charge, everything would be right because I'm more virtuous than the people who have the money. I'm more virtuous than Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk, so I would know better what to do with his money than they do. Um, but it ultimately is a recipe for slavery. It's not individual ownership of chattel slaves, but it turns everybody into a slavery to the collective. And that's why every time, well, one, every time a communist regime takes power, they have to destroy the churches and eradicate Christianity because they can't have God as a rival to their power. They have to be the absolute authority. Otherwise, it doesn't work. Otherwise, people understand they have rights that supersede the government. Um, and they have to present themselves as the savior, and it is no less demonic than when the Israelites turned to worship Baal instead of Yahweh because they thought Baal would make it rain, and they really just wanted to feed their kids. They wanted their crops to grow, so they turned to the one they thought would bring the seasonal rainfall. um, Communism is no different. It's just a little more abstract, and it has the same demonic undertones using the same temptations. And you can kind of pretty much any other topic on the left, you can kind of backchain it and find those same sinister motivations and temptations behind it. It promises something good by it claims to operate on good principles, but it corrupts everything it touches and appeals to the worst of human nature.
Mm.
Sure. I mean, that's all fair,
Okay.
but that doesn't, I don't feel like that. Trying to think of a way to explain my response to that, because if we went back to my theoretical situation where a person said this is the version of communism that I want, it has nothing to do with all the things you just said.
Same with capitalism.
Right? Capitalism can be really bad. That's a fair
I
point,
mean,
Trey.
Well, but
we've cronied it.
Like in its pure
We've
form, it's
infused
great,
it with right.
right? But it can be wrought with corruption and bribery and all kinds of bad things,
I
right?
don't think you're describing capitalism. You're describing government corruption.
Corruption in general, doesn't be government corruption, but yeah,
Well,
but the
but
point,
the so-called abuses of capitalism, they only happen by, I mean, that's because corporations are doing it in the interest of promoting their business and getting a competitive advantage. It's blamed on capitalism, but that's not capitalism. That's cronyism.
but that's exactly what defenders of communism would say about all the things you just said, Brian.
Correct.
What would they say
They would
exactly?
say that's not communism. That's imperfect humans corrupting communism. I mean, I'm not
Com-
going to sit here and don't. You're not going to trick me into defending communism. But that's precisely what they say. Like you always talk about wanting to steelman
well,
arguments. That's the steelman side of a defense of communism. I'm not interested in spending any time defending communism.
but
So
if you look at what communism is, what do they mean by communism? It means collective ownership of the means of production
yeah,
enforced by the government.
yeah,
That in and of itself implies there is no individual right to private property.
sure,
It's collectively owned,
yeah.
which is dehumanizing, and it robs people of
That's
their agency.
that second part's an opinion because there are people that would vote for that because they want that.
So you don't think that turn like in it actually it turns people into slaves.
I
That's a
agree with you.
direct.
I
I
agree with
mean,
you.
yeah. I mean,
So
yeah.
how is that not
I
dehumanizing?
didn't say it was dehumanizing. I said it's an opinion. Well, it's an opinion that it's bad. There are people that are perfectly comfortable in that kind of an environment. Not, in my opinion, not people I want to be associated with. And I'm not going to defend it. So
Which
I'm
my
not
scenario of people that were gathered together in a spot that voted for this thing and they want that
right.
municipality to be that. that is
Uh,
not a bad or evil thing.
Like,
I
I
think
think they're
I
wrong.
well
It's
I
a
think they're out
thing.
of their minds.
okay,
Right.
living just a bunch of people deciding to move into their own community that they are free to leave at any time and voluntarily um, own things collectively.
Mhm.
That is
Yep.
not communism.
W-
Communism is where it's imposed on you. It's imposed on you by the government. As long
I don't know that that's actually part of the true definition, right? You like what's that saying that we see all the time about the trick with communism is you can vote it in, but you have to kill it off. You
Right.
have to fight to get
Shoot your
rid
way
of
out.
it,
Yeah.
right? Like it doesn't have to be imposed on you. You can hoist it upon yourself. You just can't.
no,
Your point about
but that
walking out's fair.
but that's my point. If you're doing it in one particular community and you're not imposing it on the whole country, like this is they're still acknowledging the right of everybody else to live under a free market society.
Mhm.
So the marketplace that they live in, it's only locally communal. The broader one is still free. And so it's not really communism in the sense that anybody's talking about. It certainly doesn't fit the definition
But
of
you're saying that that is inherently evil, and if people want that, then what makes that evil?
There's people that purposely go back to prison because living in prison feels better to them than living free in normal society.
so I'm not calling the people going and living in an isolated community and like a kibbutz. Like a kibbutz would
Hmm.
be an example of that.
Hmm.
I'm not calling kibbutzim evil. What I'm saying is the communism that, I mean, and let's call this, let's compare apples with apples here. The all of the leftists that we're talking about who were celebrating Charlie Kirk's death because he promoted capitalism and they were communists, they're not talking about that kind of communism, Dre. You know that. They're talking about national,
Well, I mean, the
federally.
fact that they would actually shoot somebody in the face
Right.
to make that happen
Right.
already,
I Brian,
right? Like,
I think where I'm hung up on this, and we're probably gone down into an unnecessary rabbit hole, is in no way, shape, or form would I call communism good. The difference is it actually evil? Is it demonic? Is it of
right.
Yes,
Satan? Right. And that's where I
undeniably.
don't I just can't get there. I can get that it's bad, but everything bad isn't demonic.
If the Bible is true and all of human history is you're either on one side or the other of this spiritual war, communism is definitely on the other side. I mean, Christianity was uh, all but eradicated in every country that's communist. They eradicate Christianity, or they do a state controlled Christianity that isn't really like China has state run
Again,
churches.
I agree with you, but I don't think that's a requirement of communism. I think that's where the
It
communist purists would argue that's bad communism.
I'm pretty sure most communists would agree that like churches and a communist government are incompatible. You can have one or the other. Like all communist
Maybe
regimes are atheist. That is a fact. Um,
the
that's by
regimes are,
definition
yeah. No, I agree with you. I think that's true.
because that's part and parcel of communism. But even the specifics, it doesn't like when you consider all of the forces that make that draws a person to leftism, and usually you're not just a communist. Of course, there are individual exceptions, but as part, it's all kind of part of a general continuum. I mean, you can if you're behind somebody in an intersection and they have like an equality sticker on their back bumper,
Mhm.
you can make a pretty good guess about where they stand on other issues.
Mhm.
Leftism in general is part of an overall worldview that is contrary to God. Of course, they'll be they'll protest and they'll say, "No, I go to church. My pastor is a transgender lesbian who preached about God's pronouns on Sunday." Um, so they'll protest that they're as godly and Christ-minded as I am, but that's, of course, that's part of the deception. That's part of the war, is to muddy the waters and pervert the gospel. And leftism itself it's a rival religion to Christianity. And when you look at those influences, well, how did that come about? And like, we've even on the show, we've examined the occultic origins of LGBTQ ideology. Um, Kinsey, with the guys, what's the first guy? The guy's
John
first name?
Money,
Money.
Well, no, not John Money. John Money, it came later. Alfred
Alfred,
Alfred.
Alfred
yeah.
Kinsey, close friends. He's basically the father of LGBTQ.
Gender theory
Um,
specifically.
Also, I mean, he was basically the father of the sexual revolution in general. I think, like, I don't think he was the gender theory. I think
That was Money.
that's John Money.
Yeah.
But John Money is kind of part of the milieu that Alfred Kinsey started with the sexual revolution. For the listeners who aren't familiar with Alfred Kinsey, I envy you. But he famously he did this big study on human sexuality, and it was it was presented as this philosophically neutral, objective, scientific enterprise that included things like having pedophiles keep journals of their exploitation of children, and he would include these things in his reports, and he would have uh, test subjects. He put a bunch of people in a room, mixed men and women, and he turned the lights off and see how long it took for people to start, you know, boning each other. And he did a whole bunch of stuff that, when it was published, had the effect of undermining the existing traditional sexual ethic, and it led to a lot of our casual attitudes about sex today that's destroying our civilization. Well, it just so happens that Alfred Kinsey was a close friend of a guy named Kenneth Anger, who was a avowed devil worshiper and a follower of Aleister Crowley. Aleister Crowley, he famous one of his he wrote a book called The Vision and the Voice, in which he journaled his performance of these rituals called the 30 Aethers, which were devised by John Dee during the 1600s, the late 1500s, early 1600s, by um, communing with angels who were supposed to be giving him the keys to rediscovering the language spoken by Adam in the Garden of Eden. It was, to make a long story short, like, I read about all this stuff years ago, and I didn't know what to make of it. It was just kind of a curiosity of mine. I've just been interested in occult tradition, not as a practitioner, but like just to kind of figure out, like, what are grown men doing, you know, doing these putting on robes and doing these rituals and performing spells. What are they getting out of that? What do they, like, why does somebody as intelligent as John Dee, who was a brilliant man who had just a whole litany of inventions to his name. He was an advisor to Queen Elizabeth I. He devoted his life to this stuff, and I was just curious about what he and others like him were getting out of it. It didn't make much sense to me until I discovered Michael Heiser and the Divine Council worldview, and I understood what was going on in Genesis 6 with the Watchers on Mount Hermon, what was going on in the Tower of Babel. And you kind of have this pattern of, and the Watchers are another synonym for the Divine Council, the sons of God who rule over the nations. When God disinherited humanity at the Tower of Babel for refusing his command to multiply and fill the earth. And they were trying, the Tower of Babel was a ziggurat. They were trying to reinstate the arrangement of Mount Hermon, in which the sons of God descended to earth and fathered the Nephilim and gave forbidden knowledge to mankind. So you have this pattern of the sons of God doing that, giving that forbidden knowledge to mankind. And it always leads in some kind of sexual weirdness. It always leads to the perversion of our sexual ethic. The sons of God sleeping with the daughters of men, fathering the Nephilim. A lot of ancient Middle Eastern religion, like there was the sacred bed of Marduk that was at the top of the ziggurat of Etemenanke, which is what the Tower of Babel was. Basically, the last act of Ghostbusters, where the keymaster and the gatekeeper join to open the gateway for Gozer the Gozerian to come through. Like it's done by this ritual sex act, which is like the running theme is this defilement of human sexuality, which Aleister Crowley excelled at, and John Dee and Edward Talbot, his scryer, got into some weird stuff. But long story short, I think that when Aleister Crowley did that, I think he unleashed something on the earth. I think that there was, if the Bible is true, and the stories about Mount Hermon and the forbidden knowledge given to mortals by the gods, the story about Tower of Babel, and the demons that they worshipped, those demons still exist. And I think Aleister Crowley unleashed them upon the world, and they were happily embraced by the likes of Kenneth Anger and Alfred Kinsey. And LGBTQ ideology is a direct outgrowth of that. So that is something that is definitely demonic, and it fits into the overall spiritual warfare that we read about. And there's, and you can kind of backtrack a lot of stuff in leftism to those kinds of roots, and that's just an example of it. Like if you look at the underlying principles that they're based on, it's typically something that is directly hostile to biblical principles, such as you shall not steal. Communism is basically just state-sanctioned theft. It's a denial of our rights to property.
So I think broadly, I don't want to get into the specifics, but all the stuff you said about Kinsey and money, I agree with. And I think anything that you can backtrack to those two, I have no problem calling that demonic, because I do think it's evil. I grinned for those that are listening and not watching us with the last thing that Brian said, because I am wont to decry taxation as theft, which then through the transitive properties of logic, with what Brian just said, taxation is demonic. And that amuses me just to put that phrasing together and to backtrack all of that.
I don't think that taxation is theft in principle, but it is theft in practice. And you have kind of the same principle that I'm talking about at work with this idea that
I'm convinced it's all demonic.
Okay.
Like if taxation's demonic and that's what I have to accept for everything else to be demonic, then taxation's demonic and it's all demonic.
Would you agree with me that if you have a strong biblical worldview and you have integrated those principles into your outlook, that would preclude communism? And
if there is no way to contrive it otherwise, then yeah. But I'm going back to the argument that everybody that's read a lot more about communism than I have, those that are trying to, be for communism, will argue till their voices stop that the reason communism hasn't worked is because it's been bad implementations of it. So I think one of those people would argue that there would be a way to do it that could, cohabitate with Christianity.
Yeah, but that's the same conceit.
I'm not defending it.
Yeah, that's the same conceit that I'm talking about. basically like those people who are implementing it, well, they're not as good as I am. Like they're not as they were just bad people, ignoring the fact that
I mean,
yeah,
isn't that your take on the current instantiation of the DCU?
I don't understand what you're saying.
That the DCU should be really good because they're doing it badly, and everybody that's ever made a Superman movie didn't know what they were doing and made bad ones. I'm being flip, but
At
you're
first,
on record of saying that, right?
you said DCU, and I heard DCW.
DCU, yeah.
But yeah,
I did too at first, and I was like, oh no, he's talking about DC.
no, I will freely acknowledge that if I had the opportunity, I would make a billion times better Superman movie than James Gunn or
Right.
Zack Snyder
That was the
combined.
point I was making. I was just
But
trying to wrap that around.
but that's not because that would be a good analogy if every Superman movie ever made sucked, and I thought I alone could be the first one to make a good Superman movie. We've had good Superman movies, just not by those two. And and I would base it on the good things that other creators have done. So it's a bad analogy, and I think you should apologize.
We had a
I
good
think,
one. It was called Man of Steel.
oh, you know,
You don't understand Superman.
I think I don't think Matt wants to understand Superman. I
I
think
know he's just trolling
it-
us.
it's you know, I like to go back to, the sons of God and how they gave things to humans, and then fast forward thousands of years to Crowley. I think there is something to, when you start playing with like Ouija boards, or start using Enochian languages, or play with some binaural beats, trying to,
Open
get
your
into
third eye or whatever.
some kind of spiritual realm, then you do not only invite angels, which is what it's for, allegedly,
Allegedly.
right? You don't know what spirits you are letting in, and I think that Crowley invited actual demons. So then it tells me, like, what did they teach him, and then when it was unleashed on the world, what do they actually whisper into our ears? And the Bible warns against the actual temptations of the of the demonic, not necessarily possessions, but when you have desire and temptations. The Paul talks about it in Galatians. Uh, our guy James, when you start talking about lust and pride and selfishness, and those deadly sins, those are the things that are whispered, and then it just kind of free falls from there. So I don't know that any of these people, other than maybe world leaders, maybe some practitioners of some sort of demon languages, th- it's just a product of those whispers, which makes human influence later on down the world, down the road. It's almost as if Satan could have just set the ball rolling 6,000 years ago, and then went totally laissez-faire after that, and we just perpetuated it with our own. Since we're fallen, we just keep it going.
Yeah.
For all we know, demons aren't doing shit. They're just looking and like,
I mean, I think you said it, or Brian said it early in the show. And I think there's something to that about, the devil, he's most effective when we are just following ourselves. Right. That's kind of the trick. It's almost like a Kaiser Soze kind of thing. The greatest trick he ever pulled was to make us think he doesn't exist. And
Yeah,
maybe that's the same argument here, is that it's not that we don't think he exists, but we don't think it's him behind these bad things. And it really is. That's entirely
yeah,
possible. And
and that's really my point in like all the stuff that motivated people celebrating Charlie Kirk being killed. Like I don't think it has to be overtly and explicitly occult related as
right, there wasn't a
LGBTQ.
demon that popped up behind, Sarah in Seattle. Talk about, hey, make this video,
Hmm.
make the video. But I think that they're so poisoned by some kind of ideology or an us versus them, and I'm so virtual and virtuous, and that guy is not. That we, I think it was Matt that said, that they created a system on who they to choose who lives and dies
I,
because of virtuosity, right? So
Yeah.
I,
So if
I
I was,
would.
hang on a second, Brian. If it occurs to me that I remember when we had a conversation way back when, and we were talking about the Garden of Eden and the Nakash and what it really meant, and we were kind of going through some of Heiser's stuff, and he kind of flips back and forth in his description, explanation of what it means, the words, and literarily what was actually being described, right? And he basically leaves it as it's if you read Heiser's books, he basically says, "Look, I'm going to explain this literarily. They weren't talking about the devil; it was just a snake, and snakes could talk." But then he wraps back around to it really was the devil, and it's kind of confusing to go through all of this. But I remember when we were talking about it, and Brian, I think you said it, and I think you were actually requoting Heiser, and you said, at the end of the day, was the snake working against God or for God? And if he was working against God, doesn't that make him the enemy, which by, connections makes it the devil? And I think maybe that's the easiest way to kind of sum up this stuff, right? Is an event or a thing, and I think you just said this, Brian, in different words. You kind of did an us them kind of statement where you were like, it's either working in favor of God's plan and the kingdom, or it's working against it. And that's kind of an easy way to kind of ascertain or divine
Yeah.
in the non-holy sense.
By the way,
Um,
I did not say that.
I think you did.
I that because I object to that statement. That doesn't I don't agree
Okay.
with that. That doesn't sound like me at all.
Okay.
Um, but
I could have misremembered.
I as I understand what Heiser was saying about the serpent, I think he was saying that you have to engage with the text first as this is a serpent
Hmm.
without bringing in no, that's the devil.
Hmm.
Now, I do think that they understood as well as we do that snakes don't talk.
Hmm.
That so this was clearly not merely a snake, but according to the text itself, this is a serpent. It's this Adam had just named the wild animals that God had given him dominion over, and this is an exercise of authority to name them. It was also a participation in God's creative work by adding another dimension of order to creation by naming the animals. So all of this should, like, we often kind of read the the Bible by its designated chapters, which are artificial. The original reader would just have this in mind, having just read that Adam named the animals. Now, the serpent was more crafty than any other wild animal of the earth that God had created. So this was a subordinate to Adam. So I think that's what we're supposed to engage in first, but then we understand, and also we have to read it in the context of ancient Near Eastern literature, where serpents were chaos creatures. Typically, you have the storm god doing epic battle with the dragon or like this monstrous serpent to tame chaos and then turn its carcass into the earth and impose order. But it's like creation is always this epic battle. Here, the serpent is introduced as a chaos creature, but he's more of a pest. He's not threatening the cosmic order, or at least not the created order. He's threatening the relationship between God and man. And so that's how he sows chaos. And I think that's what we're supposed to engage with when we read it as just a serpent. But based on all of that, then we realize, oh well, that's the devil, that's the accuser. But
That's literally
um,
what I just said. But okay, if that's not what you said, that's okay. If I didn't represent it well, that's fine.
okay. Um, uh, well, the part about he's not really God's enemy, but he's working for God,
No,
that's the part I was pushing
no,
back
I said
against.
the opposite.
Okay. Well, I don't want to relitigate it. I mean, I apologize if I Like
It's
this
fine.
is, but
Glad we got that cleared up.
Right. That was
but
super good.
like my to sum up my overall position, I mean, whatever else is going on, the church is not just one thing siloed alongside all these other things that we're doing, and that it's only demonic if it attacks the church. The church is supposed to be the this the centerpiece of human history. We are God's agents for accomplishing his purposes in history. We don't think of it that way because we kind of, I think the church is kind of corrupt and apostate and dysfunctional. And it should be a more central, not, I don't mean central the way it was in the Middle Ages. I think that was also demonic. And I've said this before. Um, and this is a good example of the whole what you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, what you loose on earth will be loose in heaven. Um, when Jesus was tempted in the wilderness, the devil took him to a high place, showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their splendor, and he said, "These have been given to me, and I can give them to anyone I please. I'll give them to you if you worship if you worship me." And of course, the Lord rebuked him. Get I just written, "You should worship the Lord your God and serve Him only." Um, I think the church, by merging with the Roman state, starting in the fourth century, gave into that temptation by taking political power. I don't think that when the devil tempted him to worship him, he meant just prostrate himself and say and praise him. He meant take up his methods, to abandon his mission as to die for the sins of the world and suffer the violence of the reigning empire. Instead, conquer that empire, take control of the world by force, and then you can impose God's law on everybody. Um, that would have been the negation of his mission, so he didn't. You can only advance God. Salvation is only by grace through faith, which you can only advance by persuasion. People can only join it voluntarily. Otherwise, it's not real. It's not real faith. It's not real salvation. In the fourth century, the church, understandably, given that it was on the tail end of the worst, the most severe, longest empire-wide systematic persecution of Christians in history. So it's understandable why they would want to cozy up to the emperor when he was cozying up to them. But it had the effect of marrying. People often characterize it as the Christianization of the Roman Empire. I think that's wrong. I think it's the Romanization of Christianity. And that's when the church started to gain political power, where it can impose its will by government force. And they could burn heretics at the stake, and kings had to, get popes' permissions to do things. It wasn't operating by persuasion, and I think that corrupted it. That was us losing a major war in a major battle in the spiritual war, and I think we still haven't recovered from it. But so stuff like that. I think when the church abandons its principles and gives into temptations like that, I think that's also demonic. Um, Anything that weakens the church, that compromises the church's missions, that marginalizes the church, or is being set up as an alternative to the church as the pillar of the and foundation of the truth, that is demonic by definition, because it's making war against God's purposes through Christ. So which means, and in closing, at least for my part, you have more to fear from the devil, I think, from your own pulpit than you do necessarily from the occult or Harry Potter books or anything else that's overtly occultic.
Damn
There's the
Dungeons and Dragons.
yeah.
No, I mean, I think that's a fair point. You've said that before, so I don't think that's why you didn't get a very crazy reaction from us, but I think it's still a solid point. Dre, what do you think?
I think that there's like this linkage game. First of all, everything that bad or that you perceive as negative in the world is not demonic. It's not Satan doing everything like we said in the beginning. Like he didn't pop your tire, he didn't break your water heater. Like that's the devil doesn't pop up behind every bush. But since the fall of man, I do believe that that some temptations were whispered and we got drunk on our own Kool-Aid. And I think that that's the point of the whole communism rant that Brian gave. I think that secularism, people that believe in science only, and I think that we have gotten into our own way, and and the people kind of drunk on their own hype are also people that speak from a pulpit that have a platform to persuade Christians in particular. And when they um, get a bit of that world and that pride and that selfishness, and they kind of go along with things that were whispered by demons from a long time ago, and they don't even know that that is what they're doing, then I think that it just perpetuates and the and we're in a tough spot where it's hard to rewind the clock. So,
Yeah.
you know, in conclusion, like I think that there is all this demonic influence. I just don't think it's like that. I don't think that it's behind every bush. I don't think there's a demon whispering in everybody's ear. I don't think every time you make a terrible decision, every time somebody gambles or takes a sip of alcohol or cheats on their wife, like that's not the devil speaking to them. That's that's them already going down the path that the devil lit up for you. Like there's paths to go and there's decisions to make every moment of the day, and some of them are lit, some of them are thorny, some of them are hard to do. And um, I heard a good saying this week that uh, it's that how you do anything is how you will do everything,
Hmm.
which kind of goes back to wearing white socks with your uniform or not
hmm
shaving properly or being fat
hmm
or
The whole
you
thing
know
about always make your bed or whatever.
right,
And yeah,
making subtle things, saying negative things about your wife, or
yeah,
you know
that's
how
interesting.
how you do anything is how you will do everything.
Yeah.
uh, so be disciplined. you know uh don't go down the lighted path always. And I think that that's what the devil set into motion. And I don't even think he has to have his hand in anything anymore. I think that we do a good enough job of that ourselves by basically worshiping ourselves and worshiping secularism.
I want to read something.
Before you do, I want to tell Dre that the other thing you said was actually said by my pastor today or last on Sunday. So the comment about drinking and cussing and gambling and all of that, he goes, they're not necessarily sins. They're the byproduct of sins.
Mm,
And I was like, and that's essentially what you just said.
right.
And it was interesting for him to say that because he was like, they're not sins. And I'm like, thank you. And he goes, they're the byproducts. So I was like, you son of a bitch. You had me in the first half.
Put your hand down, Matthew.
Right. Good thing. Luckily, I was downstairs running
Right.
the online system so nobody could see me. I didn't say amen out loud.
Amen, baby.
Go ahead, Brian. What were
Clutching
you going to read?
pearls.
Finally, be strong in the Lord and in his mighty power. Put on the full armor of God so that you can take your stand against the devil's schemes. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. Therefore, put on the full armor of God so that when the day of evil comes, you may be able to stand your ground. And after you have done everything, to stand. Um, And yeah, he lists the armor of God. So it is ongoing. It's not. I mean, the devil is active. I should have asked this at the very start because we're wrapping, but do we agree that demonic possession is a thing that happens?
Yeah, I don't have any reason to think it's not real.
Okay. What do you think, Trey?
Um, yeah, I mean, I don't think that it happens every time someone makes a bad decision, but I think that I think there's something to that. I think, hell, I think part of schizophrenia is probably that. I think a lot of mental illness might be that. I think that, I mean, I can't really quantify it or, list it, but, I believe that it happens. Yeah, sure.
I would have a hard time being convinced that multiple personality disorder isn't demonic possession.
Right.
I don't think that even exists. I think that's people
Could be.
playing make believe.
Could
Could
be.
be.
Or the
But
times that it exists was demonic possession.
yeah, if that is real, if there is
That's
any
what I'm saying.
reality to that,
I think if it's a real thing, I
yeah,
think it is demonic possession. I don't think humans can create sub personalities on the fly like that.
I do. There is a technique in Zen Buddhism for creating an alternate personality, but I don't know. Maybe that's a doorway to open. But anyway, that's a tangent. I don't want to get
Some
into that.
meditation that back to the thing Dre was talking about letting in some Aleister Crowley type John Dee stuff.
Well, that it could be that, or it could be drawing from your own psyche and isolating it and kind of anyway,
Mhm.
that's a whole different topic. But how do you think demonic possession happens?
I don't understand the question.
Well, how does somebody go from being not possessed to possessed by a demon?
I don't I don't freaking know, dude. I've never been possessed.
Okay. I mean, I mean, I don't know that you have to have been possessed to.
Well,
I
I'd
don't know.
love to hear. I'd love to hear
I think
your
there's
well understood example of it, unless
I,
you've been possessed.
I think there's mind, spirit, and soul, and I think that those things are. Uh, I think that all three of those think consciousness itself is not necessarily in our material plane, and I think that if you leave yourself vulnerable or leave some kind of door into I, I don't want to be tied down to this verbiage, but for lack of a better term, dimensional, right? Like if if you leave that door open, then some other piece of consciousness can merge with yours and then manifest itself onto our material plane is my off the cuff, top of my head, pathway to demonic possession.
I don't have a definitive answer. I don't know. The Bible simply never
Right. That was
provides an
exactly what I
explanation for
that
that.
that's why I seemed incredulous that you were alluding to having
But
an idea.
but but like I'm not like I wouldn't claim to know dogmatically, I should say. I think there are clues. I think Satan Satan is asked to sift you as wheat. That kind of gives a glimpse. Like I think that it is I think like the whole vampire myth where you have to invite them in, otherwise they are stuck at your door until you do. I think that has some basis in fact. I think you have to, in a sense, invite them in, and I don't think it's a conscious. Although in a lot of occult uh, practices, there is the invite like an open invitation to demons.
Like
But I don't
seances and shit like that.
seances and theurgy
Hmm.
and voodoo practices of being ridden by spirits, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So there is that, but I don't think I don't think in first century Judea people were doing seances and voodoo and and inviting demons to possess them. But
I don't know.
but
I think they
but I
were. That's where I think I guess you said first century Judea. I should be more clear. That's what I've always read into the prohibition of tattooing in Leviticus. because it says specifically, don't mark yourself with the dead.
Don't mark yourself for the dead.
For the dead, yeah. But I always read that to mean some type of ancestral spirit harnessing kind of thing versus putting an RIP mama on your arm. I don't think that's quite the
Right.
same thing. I think that's speaking to some kind of occultish
Yeah.
behavior. That's just how
well,
I've always read that.
I do think that making yourself vulnerable to the devil's, him approaching God and asking permission to do things because he has a claim on you. I think that's a big part of it. Just in short, certain. I mean, if you deliberately engage in habitual sins, I think that you are making yourself vulnerable. I don't think you have to get a Ouija board or play Dungeons and Dragons or any of that stuff. I think just sin, taking yourself outside of God's protection, and I think that a lot of the whole Charlie Kirk's death celebration. I think that is. I think all of those people are deliberately renouncing God's protection. And so, I'm not claiming to know with any certainty that any given person is demon possessed, but if demon possession is real at all, and any of the clues we find in the Bible about how it happens are valid, I think, yeah, there are probably some demon possessed people out there. Which I know sounds crazy to modern sensibilities, but modern sensibilities are misguided and wrong.
Yeah,
But
you definitely should have asked that in the beginning of the show because as we're
That
trying
would
to
have been a whole
wrap up,
different it would have been a whole
yeah,
different
man.
show. Yeah,
But that's,
it's too late to
so,
dive
so
into this now.
so those are good points. But Matt, why don't you go ahead and why don't you get the last thoughts,
Yeah,
Brian. Matt gets the
I
last
think
thoughts,
simple
and
last thoughts are, irrespective of what was discussed on this show, communism is really bad. Um, that was a trap conversation, but it's always bad. It'll always be bad. Okay, don't do communism. Okay.
I concur with that.
um, I I I think actually I'd like to synthesize what both Brian and Dre have said in that I don't think the devil's hiding behind every minor inconvenience in your life, but I certainly think specifically our modern proclivities to follow what feels good and hedonistic is probably easily identified as evil, because that's clearly the opposite of what Christ directed us to do. I think that's a pretty simple litmus test. Um, so yeah, I don't think God drives hurricanes around like a like a D9 dozer. Um, he could, I just don't think he does.
I just feel like
That doesn't mean he won't.
I feel
I
like
just don't think
California
he
and New
does.
York would get much more.
Right. There's a lot of bad going on.
Or maybe it's because the whole Bible Belt should know better, so they get all the hurricanes and tornadoes.
Could be. Could be. But you would also think that maybe like, overly demonic places, like, I don't know, all of the Islamic section of the world would just already have been sucked into the ground. But
But I mean,
that's a different conversation for a different day.
they do look like they have been. So,
Yeah, I mean, that's a fair point.
Just saying.
I think being under Islam is already kind of
Its own punishment.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I guess.
All
Yeah, that's it.
right. So with that, I'll say go ahead and stay enlightened and stay curious, and we will see you next week. God bless. Take care.